Yes people, hope you're all good. Welcome back to the channel. In today's episode, I'm going to be talking about creatine. I'm sure if you're watching this, you probably have taken creatine in the past, currently taking it, or know someone that's taken it. And creatine is one of those supplements that is a pretty safe bet if you're looking to take something to improve your performance. A little bit of background on creatine. So creatine is produced in the body endogenously. We produce about 1 gram per day, and someone following a typical omnivorous diet will consume about 1 gram of creatine from meat-based food products. Creatine is stored in muscle tissue and the brain, and it's been seen to have massive impacts on muscle metabolism and brain and cognitive function as well. Creatine plays a major role in improving high intensity intermittent exercise via a couple of pathways. We know that it increases our phosphocreatine levels, which are essentially an energy reservoir within the muscle. It also helps us regenerate phosphocreatine a little bit faster during our recovery periods during exercise, and it also enhances ATP production a lot quicker and makes energy more available to you when working at those high intensities. So to give you a little bit of the physiology, when we consume creatine, it gets stored within our muscle tissue as phosphocreatine. So when we exercise, we need to produce energy, and our energy currency within the body is something called adenosine triphosphate, so ATP. So exercise requires ATP, and when we use this ATP, it gets broken down into adenosine diphosphate, so it loses a phosphate group. But because we've been consuming creatine and we have that energy reservoir within the muscle, which is our phosphocreatine, our body is able to then donate a phosphate group that we already have stored to ADP to then convert that back and regenerate more ATP to be made available to the muscle to then help you produce more energy at those high intensities. And this process allows for a more continuous energy supply to the working muscle. Performance-wise, creatine is thought to, as a blanket statement, improve various performance markers by up to 15%, which could be the difference between you winning and losing on fight night. So we know that creatine improves our anaerobic capacity. It also enhances our resistance training capabilities and our body composition as well by increasing our muscle mass. It also has impacts on our cognitive function when under stress from exercise, and it can also potentially help people suffering from mild traumatic brain injury. It could also be a really useful supplement if you're an injured athlete or going through a rehabilitation phase. So creatine has a lot of benefits for athletes. What protocol should you use to ensure that you're ingesting enough creatine for it to be stored in the muscle as phosphocreatine? So we have two main protocols that we can use. So we have a loading phase and a maintenance phase. The only difference between the two is the rate at which we're able to store phosphocreatine within the muscle. So with the loading phase, you'll be able to store this creatine and saturate the muscle a lot quicker than just the maintenance phase. So if you are someone looking to get some quick gains from creatine, you could, in theory, see improvements within 5 days. So what you would do is 20 grams of creatine split into 3 to 4 doses to reduce any GI discomfort or distress. And then once those 5 days are up, you can move on to a maintenance dose of 5 grams per day. The other strategy would just be a maintenance dose. So you could have just 5 grams a day, and in 20 to 30 days, your muscle would be completely saturated. So you have to try and think about what strategy you want to use and then implement it. Coming on to some myths around creatine. The first one is it causes cramps, dehydration, you need to drink more water when taking creatine. Again, this is a myth. So there was one study that found that people who were taking creatine suffered with high levels of cramp, and that could be associated with dehydration. But what they found is this wasn't a tightly controlled study, it was self-reported. And what they found is that nearly everyone in this group was taking a higher dose than the recommended amount. So higher amounts of creatine past the recommended dosage could potentially cause some issues. But we're not going to do that, we're going to stick to the doses and be absolutely fine. Because in a follow-up study from this, they found that people who were taking either creatine or a maltodextrin placebo, and what they found was after 28 days of supplementation, the creatine group experienced less muscle tightness, less muscle cramps. Creatine does not cause dehydration or cramping when you're consuming the recommended dosage. The second myth is creatine isn't safe for children. There's been multiple studies regarding this topic, and whilst creatine is safe for kids, I would go against trying to implement a supplement into a child or adolescent's nutrition protocol, because we want to try and adopt a food first approach, and at that age creatine probably isn't the most important thing. So if you want your child or to be on creatine and have creatine, it is safe for them, but we want to try and focus on better dietary practices rather than just trying to implement some supplements and have the magic pill that's going to solve all their performance problems. And the last myth is, does creatine cause water retention? So creatine does not cause long-term water retention. What studies find is that in the short term, when you do a loading phase, there can be some short-term water retention of around 1 to 3 kilograms, depending on the size of the athlete. And this is because creatine is taken up into the muscle for a sodium-dependent transporter, and wherever sodium goes, water is going to follow. So more water is taken up into the muscle, meaning that you are retaining more water. But when you move on to the maintenance dose, after 28 days of supplementation, water content in the body is no different from your baseline values. So it will cause some short-term water retention in the beginning, but once you carry on with your maintenance dose, there isn't any long-term water retention. And obviously that can be quite problematic if you are in a weight-based sport like most of you watching. So one thing that I always try and tell fighters is to not do a loading phase close to fight week, because again it's going to cause some issues with water retention and weight. But you can keep creatine in as a maintenance dose throughout fight week, and it's completely up to you as an athlete. If you still think that creatine causes water retention and it's going to cause you stress on fight week, then take creatine out. Going a week without creatine, your muscle phosphocreatine stores aren't just going to dramatically drop overnight. And just try and implement that back into your reload strategy so you can again try and saturate your muscles a little bit more before the fight. That's everything that you need to know regarding creatine. If you enjoyed this episode, feel free to like, comment and subscribe, and I'll catch you next time.